Let's begin with some announcements here. All right, so I've just collected homework number 7. Here is the paper for homework 8. It's also posted online. And today what we're going to do is we're going to be going over something called rate of return analysis. And so remember, we've been comparing alternatives. Up till now, what we've been using as our technique is either the future worth analysis or present worth analysis or annual worth. And we're comparing two projects and we're picking the one that gives us the most profit. So that's one way to compare alternatives, but there are more sophisticated ways that give us better information, and that's what we're going to begin during the next few lectures. And today, one of the things we need to learn how to do is to calculate when you make an investment, how long it takes to get that money back. Because remember, our typical cash flow diagram for all these alternatives have been that we make some payment and then we receive income over time. And so what we're going to be looking at today is a different expression of this idea of making an investment and then getting it back over time. So that's the idea behind unrecovered investment balance. So the next assignment's due a week from today. And as always, I'll encourage you to do yourself a favor and get an early start on that assignment. You know, you can't do every problem on it yet, but after today's class, you could certainly get an early start. So any questions related to the announcements before we get going? All right, so here's the main idea. I think I need to lock down the browsers. I hear a lot of clicking and not a lot of listening. All right, so the reason why I locked down everything is because I really want you to focus on this picture. You know, sometimes on the exams, I'll provide a picture and I'll ask you to explain the picture. That's a really good short answer technique, I think, is just having the students explain the picture. So let me take a crack at this one. What happens in the beginning is you invest money, and so on the traditional cash flow diagram, that's an arrow down, because you're spending your money in hopes of getting some back in the future. This is visualizing that same thing, but in a different way. On the positive axis, so we're going up because the way it's titled is unrecovered investment balance. So unrecovered means you still have a deficit. You've given out some money and you haven't gotten it back yet. So you can think of this, even though it's above the line, it still represents money that should be coming to you that hasn't come to you yet. All right, so you make this initial investment and then the blue dashed line. Let me ask you this. Why do you think this dashed blue line is going up in a curved way like that? Any guesses what it means, what it represents? Yeah? Compounding interest, that's good. And from the shape of it, they intentionally, now it's not to scale, but conceptually, the shape of that curve is meant to represent that as time goes on, your interest is gathering interest. And so you made some investment and you should be getting back not only your original investment, but you should also be getting back a return. So you should be receiving interest on your investment. And so that blue line represents just before the end of the first year how much money you need to get back to you, because you made an initial payment and you should be getting back even more than the initial payment because of interest. And then this sudden black line down is representing the revenue that you've received. And so why does revenue coming to you make this line go down? We usually draw revenue as a line up. So in this diagram, why is the revenue line down? What's it? Okay. The money is coming to you, and so it's still an inflow. It's not a withdrawal, it's an inflow. But it's not necessarily a bank. Remember, this could be any kind of investment. You could be buying a truck, for example. So you paid some money for a truck, and now the idea is you want to get that money back. And so the answer is, think about what is the title of this axis. Unrecovered investment balance. So when you get your revenue at year one, you're recovering some of your initial balance. And so that brings the amount that's unrecovered down. So the overall line, you can see the trend of the line is it's getting closer and closer to zero. Because at the end of this cash flow diagram, it should, at the right interest rate, all balance out to zero. We got back all of our initial investment, and we made whatever our profit rate was. And so you need to pay special attention. Always remember that that is titled unrecovered investment balance.
Why is revenue bigger?
The revenue line, if it's not bigger than the amount of the interest, then you'll never get down to zero. So your revenue should recover not only the interest, but also you should be getting back a portion of your principal. And so this line has two components, really. It's not showing both of them, but what it's showing is that you should be getting back profit and your principal in the same payment. So let's look at some of these labels here. R stands for revenue, and so the revenue is just the length of this line, each one of the payment. E is an expense. Now when you're operating a business, in addition to that, this is the net revenue, but there may be some expenses as well. The fuel, maintenance, the salary you have to pay. Over time, you're going to have costs in addition to the original one-time investment that is required to purchase the equipment. And so here where it's saying R minus E, that means the revenue minus the expenses. So that's how much is going towards buying down your unrecovered investment balance. Another way of thinking about it is it's your profits. R minus E, the revenue minus expenses, is the profits, and you want your profits to justify the original investment that you made at the beginning. So you'll notice here they're calling this I prime. I prime is an interest rate that we want to find out. We want to find out what interest rate does it take so that our cash flow diagram is in balance, so that at the end of the useful life of the item, all of the inflows and the outflows are equal. So we're solving for an interest rate in this. The internal rate of return, this is a phrase that we'll come back to in the next class as well. And by the way, I don't think I emphasized it. Class will be here on Tuesday again. So we're back in the computer lab on Tuesday. All right. So when we come back on Tuesday, we're also going to be dealing with this thing called internal rate of return. And what the internal rate of return is it's the interest rate you're trying to solve for. It's whatever interest rate means that your inflows and your outflows balance to zero at the end of the project. So if you have the MAR is greater than the internal rate of return, then that would mean that you're having to borrow money at a higher rate than you're getting back from the project. So that would be a bad thing. It's a good thing, though, if your internal rate of return, if you solve for the I that makes this all balance out and it's greater than your borrowing cost, that's what you want, because that means you're going to turn a profit. So here is today's activity. Does everyone have a copy of the handout for today's in-class exercise? The revenue isn't negative because it reduces your unrecovered investment balance. Remember that this is unrecovered investment balance. So another way you can think about it is it's the money you haven't got back yet. So if this vertical axis is the money you didn't get back yet, anytime you receive money, then it's going to be reducing the amount that you didn't get back yet. Okay, so everyone has a copy of today's activity? All right, so the first part you're doing with the table lookup method. Part A says, here we've got the fact that you receive $85,000 from the bank for a 5-year loan, 4% annual interest, where you're going to make annual repayments. So draw the cash flow diagram. That should be easy by now. Then part B, use the table lookup method to find the payment. So on the back there, you're going to find your annual payment. And then part C, we're going to use Excel, and I've given you some formulas here at the bottom of the page where it's referring to a column number. Can I have everyone to look at the screen for just a moment? You're eager to begin, and I like that, but I don't want everyone to ask me the same question, and that is, what do these formulas mean? So let me give you that explanation. These columns are numbered. Now you can just prepare your table to look exactly like this, but the way that you do the equations is, for example, column 2 is going to be the interest rate multiplied by the amount in column 1. Column 3 will be column 1 plus column 2. And so you can just follow these explanations on how you can calculate what's supposed to go in each column. So when we get to that point, I'll start circulating around to see if you're on the right track. But for now, draw the cash flow diagram and then find the payment amount using the table lookup method. All right, so here's the answers. As I've been walking around, it seems like most people are getting this, this amount. Now, if we had the perfect payment amount, it would go to 0. Why don't we have exactly the perfect payment amount here? Why is it that it didn't go exactly to 0? Yeah? I couldn't hear you, but I think you're probably saying because we use the table lookup method, which only has a certain number of digits, right? So if you look, like this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. We're claiming to have 7 digits of accuracy, but it's only going to be 4 or 5 from the table. So you know, it's really important on this to, it's one thing to get the numbers, but it's another to understand what's happening. And so I'd encourage you, if you got the numbers, don't be complacent. You know, could you do this again without me providing the formulas? Like if you were in an exam asked to make a chart or a table of the unrecovered investment balance. Do you know the method? Do you understand what each of these columns means? So let's talk through them together just to make sure that we're on the same page. Now I've bolded this, unrecovered principal balance at the beginning of the year. You'll notice it didn't start with 0. And the reason why is that what we're saying is that year 1 has a beginning and an end. And so at the beginning of year 1, $85,000 is how much you've got from the bank. So that's how much they have not yet recovered from you. At the end of the year, the interest is going to be 4% of that. So you'll notice here I have my I. Guys, if you're going to talk while I'm talking, can you at least whisper? So I don't have to fight with you like our voices arguing back and forth on who's going to be loudest. I'd appreciate it. Okay, so here this is the amount of interest that's due on the amount that hasn't yet been recovered. So then at the end of the year, it's going to be the beginning amount plus the interest. So this is at the end of the year how much we owe the bank, or from their point of view, that's the amount that they have not yet recovered on their original investment. So it's even more than they originally gave out because of the 4% interest. So here's the payment amount we calculated manually using the table lookup method. And then how much of that goes towards principal is the difference between the interest amount and the overall payment. So the payment that we give to the bank, some of it goes towards interest and some of it goes towards paying down the original balance, the amount that we took from them originally. And what you'll notice is if you add up all of these amounts, here's a little hint on Excel. If you highlight some cells, then at the bottom it will tell you some statistics about them. Here it's saying the count, that means the number of things that you have highlighted. Here is the sum. Here's the average. So you don't actually have to do the formula anytime you want to know the sum of something. So if I've just highlighted those cells, and you'll notice the sum is 85,000. And so the sum of all of your principal payments should equal how much they gave you in the beginning, and it does. The unrecovered investment balance is going to be how much they originally gave you minus how much they haven't yet, the amount that went towards the principal for that year. So this is, in their eyes, the original principal that they gave you, how much they haven't gotten back yet, and then the interest, you can think of that as the bank's profit. So at the end, if we had the perfect payment amount, it would go to zero. So the way that we do this for decision making is sometimes we want to find out what is the interest rate. And so we would solve for the I that makes it so that it goes to zero at the end. So you can think of doing a goal seek like what if we had an investment where $85,000 was going to be the original amount, but then what if we're giving the bank a different amount? You know, like if it's not already set up to balance to zero. What you could do is set up a goal seek where it's changing this, and the objective is for the unrecovered balance at the end of the entire lifespan to be down to zero. So that's what we're going to do for decision making as we move forward in solving for this I prime. The I prime just basically, it's a variable that means an unknown interest rate, and the internal rate of return is the interest rate that assumes you're taking all of the money that you've received and you're reinvesting it into the project. We'll talk more about that assumption as we go on. So let me pull up the solution for the drawing part of it. All right. So here's the figure aspect of it. And now this is just to teach you the concepts. You wouldn't necessarily, you know, at the bank, they don't have a drawing like this. It's not telling them something that they didn't already know from the table. But this just helps you to understand why the amounts are going up, why they're coming down. So you take the values from column 3. Each of these is the amount that's due before the revenue comes in. They go down by the amount of the revenue, and then this is sort of after the payment is made, how much unrecovered investment balance is still remaining. So in the end, it went to negative 1.33. It should go to zero if we have the perfect payment amount. Any questions from the figure? Okay, so that's all I have for you today. We will finish early. Let's just double check the announcements. The homework that I gave you today, that is due on Sunday, Sunday the 20th, and we're back here in the computer lab again on Tuesday, so I'll see you then.